I'm Caroline Hyde. This is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, an e-commerce battle brewing in India with billions of dollars at stake. We'll talk Flipkart fending off Amazon with new backers. Plus, Tesla tops General Motors. The electric upstart eclipses the American auto institution in market cap. What this means for the US auto industry. And a new player in the online video service space. Comcast is looking to take on Netflix and Amazon. We'll bring you all the details in a Bloomberg scoop. But first, to our lead. Tesla hit a new milestone after it surpassed General Motors to become America's most valuable auto company. And if you look inside my Bloomberg, you can see just when Tesla pushed past the competition. This is #BTV 7410. We are talking $51 billion in terms of market capitalization for Tesla, above the two other juggernauts in US autos. For more, let's get out to David Welch, Bloomberg News Detroit bureau chief. David, I mean, how much of a stepping stone is this? Because $51 billion is phenomenal. And I'm looking at the enterprise value, something Corey Johnson showed me. It's even bigger than GM and Ford when you're looking at the $55 billion enterprise value, and you're looking at GM's at $40 billion.
That's right. Well, or rather Tesla has a little bit more debt that adds to their value. Look, this is more of a symbolic moment where Tesla's really crossed the line of being more valuable than GM and Ford. But you really have to look at why. Investors are seeing Tesla as this possible future dominator of electric cars, maybe a leader in autonomous vehicles, maybe a leader in electric storage. They just have a lot of businesses with potential. And that's what everybody's really playing for. And it's a long-term play. With General Motors and Ford, the problem they have is auto sales are starting to trail down. Not by a lot. Both companies will still make a lot of money this year. GM may even set another record this year. But investors are seeing this as, well, the best is sort of behind us over the last 12 months, and maybe we'll put our money someplace else. But Tesla, there's still a lot of hope that they could grow and get more of a bump in the stock.
I mean, as Piper Jaffray analysts put it, it's optimism, freedom, defiance. These are things that the car companies are struggling to replicate that currently really symbolize where Tesla is. Just remind us, though, of the disparity in the number of cars these companies are pumping out.
Sure. GM's going to sell 10 million cars this year. Tesla, well, they got a big bump in their stock when they sold 25,000 in a month, and they're by a factor of 10, way less than General Motors. Look, it's not about car sales right now with Tesla. It's about the Model 3 coming out. That's their lower price car, and being a success. You're talking about a vehicle that's going to sell for 35 or 40,000. If they get a lot of those out, then they prove that Tesla's a phenomenon.
I mean, what's interesting, though, is that GM has its Chevy Bolt, and already it's showing a similar range to that Model 3 Tesla is going to be touting. It's showing a similar price point, but even though that's out on the road, the optimism is still much higher about the Model 3, which is yet to start coming off of the production lines.
That's right. Tesla has a couple things going for it. See, the big car companies had always seen electric cars and hybrid electric cars as something they made to meet regulations. So they made compact cars, they made hatchbacks, things that Americans typically haven't liked. Tesla made electric cars cool. The Model S is a cool luxury car. It's very sleek. It's extremely fast. The Model X sport utility vehicle, not quite as cool in terms of the design, but it's still a neat vehicle. It's got the Falcon Wing doors. These cars have a lot of elan to them that people have latched on, particularly luxury buyers who bought Porsches and expensive Audis and BMWs. You take it downscale with something like a Model 3, it still has a design that looks like it's in the same family as the Model S, but it's accessible to people who aspired to drive a Tesla or just aspired to have a piece of the Elon Musk allure. The guy has a lot of fans, and a lot of enthusiasm behind him, and it's sort of a connection. The brand has become very powerful because of those initial vehicles, and now that people who can afford a $40,000 car can get a piece of that, there's a lot of enthusiasm. But a Chevy that's a hatchback and kind of looks like a compact minivan, not so much.
Not got that je ne sais quoi. Let's just also, though, remind ourselves that it's now number 6 in the world when you're looking at auto companies, and it could quite quickly get to the number 5th place if Honda doesn't look out.
That's right. They could pass up Honda fairly soon. Getting up to the values of Toyota is quite another matter. That's worth quite a bit more. But yeah, this really shows the trajectory they're on. And look, the real story here is that Tesla stock has a ton of momentum, and we aren't even really close yet to the Model 3 launch. That's later in the year. So once that hits, it'll really be a test for, one, how much demand there really is, because we really don't know, how quickly they can manufacture them, and also can they manufacture them without defects and all kinds of problems early on. If any one of those three things becomes a problem, then you could see the stock take a hit. And it's always been a very volatile issue as well. So we'll be in for an interesting ride over the rest of the year.
Certainly will, and with that price target actually below where the current trading is, we'll see how analysts continue to update their price targets going forward. Brilliant to have you on. Thank you very much, the Bloomberg News Detroit Bureau Chief, David Welch. Now on to another key top story for you. eBay is investing $500 million in the Indian e-commerce giant Flipkart. It's a targeted move against Amazon after CEO Jeff Bezos vowed to spend $5 billion there over the next few years. Also, part of the deal, eBay is handing over its local business to Flipkart in exchange for a stake in the company and an agreement to offer Flipkart's products on eBay and vice versa. The downside, well, it was a so-called down round for Flipkart. eBay's investment is part of a $1 billion funding round Flipkart raised last month from others, including Microsoft and Tencent. And that valued the company at $10 billion, we understand, down from then $15 billion in 2015. So what does this all mean for the global e-commerce competition? BGC Partners Research Director Colin Gillis covers both Amazon and eBay and joins us from New York. Also with us on the phone from Seattle is Bloomberg technology reporter Spencer Soper, who wrote about this deal. And Spencer, I want to take it out to you first, because Flipkart, $1.4 billion that we understand it's getting in, money pouring into Indian commerce, but why the lower valuation?
Well, the internet market there is a little bit overheated, and you're seeing some consolidation, and that's why you're also seeing some companies rush in. That it's an opportune time to get in on the e-commerce leader while the industry consolidates, and venture capital is even though it's a big deal for Flipkart, that venture capital is not going to be pouring into some of these other startups competing in the space.
Colin, it's great timing for us because we just spent all of last week talking about the opportunities for investment in India, whether you're a tech investor. And it seems as though Apple's going in there. We've got many of the tech giants really understanding that India might be where it's hot while China potentially cools down a little bit. Is it all about Indian e-commerce right now?
You know, India is the world's #2 largest population. You're talking about roughly 1.2 billion people behind China with 1.4 billion, and the United States around 320 million, to give you the size of the opportunity these companies are chasing after. And what many investors are realizing is that Amazon is positioning to take this marketplace, and you're seeing consolidation happening around the remaining companies so they can fend off Amazon. And in particular, with eBay handing over their assets in India, plus the infusion of this $1 billion in cash from Microsoft, Tencent, and eBay, these are all companies that are positioned to compete against Amazon. So they're consolidating around Flipkart to have a viable competitor to Amazon.
And Spencer, update us, because this could just be a stepping stone in this saga that is a consolidation involving Flipkart, because Snapdeal, backed by Masayoshi Son, who I think owns about 1/3 of Snapdeal, another e-commerce player in India, could actually be teaming with Flipkart in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of the speculation is, and there's even some sources saying that deal's in the works. And eBay also has wound down its Snapdeal ownership, but still has about 5% ownership in Snapdeal. And that basically you're seeing this global coalition building around Flipkart to fight Amazon in this critical market. And your other guest mentioned the population, and it's not just the population; it's also the internet access. And internet access in India is really growing quickly, along with wealth, and I think it's at about 450 million now. So the country has, even if you just limit it to the number of connected people, it's still far larger than the U.S.
A global coalition. I rather like that turn of phrase, Spencer. And let's ask, therefore, Colin about it. The global coalition that's forming, do you think it's actually enough to stop the $5 billion bet that Jeff Bezos is making with Amazon?
Well, that's the question, right? And what we want to see is SoftBank's involvement, and particularly the combination of Flipkart and Snapdeal that would consolidate, two of the players. Again, you'd have that formidable rival to Amazon. And the thing to remember about the marketplace in India is it's still relatively nascent, right? The distribution channels are fine in tier 1 cities, but when you move to tier 2 and tier 3, where a lot of the growth is going to be, there's still going to be a massive need for investment. Amazon can fund investment from its own cash flows. Companies like Flipkart are going to have to rely on VC money, right? And money from external sources. And currently, this is an industry that's burning a lot of cash, right? We're seeing literally negative gross margins, billions of dollars being invested every single year. So it's going to be a battle, and Amazon is well positioned, given its capital base, to succeed. Plus, they lost in China. They lost to Alibaba. Yeah. They want to prove to investors that they can win in foreign markets like India.
And the winner being Alibaba, who at the time I think was backed to a certain extent by Masayoshi Son, sort of taking another leaf out of his well-known playbook there. And do you think that therefore the money, it's interesting, he seems to be willing to sacrifice some of the valuation in Snapdeal, which could merge with Flipkart. There's rumours that we might see an 85% cut in the valuation of Snapdeal if indeed we do see a combination of the two teams. It looks as though Masayoshi Son himself is willing to really take a hit to win in the longer term.
Correct, and that will be a very interesting transaction to watch and to see how it's structured, because Son may be willing to take that loss on Snapdeal if he can get a larger stake in Flipkart, and he likes to have stakes that are in that more meaningful category of 20 to 35%. We saw them do that with Alibaba. That was a tremendous investment for them, and we'll see if they can do that again in India.
See if they'll rewrite history in another key emerging market. Bloomberg technology reporter Spencer Soper in Seattle, and of course Colin Gillis, of course, joining us live from New York from BCG Partners. Thank you very much indeed. Now, another story we're watching. AT&T is buying a company called Straight Path Communications in an all-stock deal valued at $1.6 billion. That's because Straight Path is one of the largest holders of a certain type of spectrum that US regulators have approved to power 5G wireless services. AT&T is hoping to better compete with rivals Verizon and T-Mobile with faster internet speeds. This is the second such acquisition for AT&T so far this year. Now, coming up, chip makers have been outperforming nearly every other sector over the market over the last year. And despite its rapid growth, some analysts still think they have room to run. We'll dig into this industry next. This is Bloomberg. Now, a story we're watching. The proposed merger between Leico and Vizio is not to proceed. TV maker Vizio released a statement citing regulatory hurdles as the reason for the change of plans. Now, remember, it was just last week that a report of a continuing cash crunch at the Chinese tech conglomerate was worsening. That was brought by Selena Wang first here for Bloomberg News. And Leico delayed paying its US employees this month. Turning now to a rally that has exceeded nearly every single industry group. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, no less, which is composed of 30 chip-related companies, has gained close to 50% since last April. An unprecedented flood of mergers and orders for products that make up the guts of gadgets like refrigerators to smartphones has helped fuel the rally. Ian King covers this industry for Bloomberg Technology and joins us now with more. And you were just crunching the numbers here and just thought this is a phenomenal outperformance. Is it vindicated?
To be seen. I mean, every time something like this happens, you have the bulls and the bears. Numbers say that's it. This is the end. We should be taking money off the table. Yeah. But then when we went out and started speaking to investors, they're actually saying, no, actually, we think there's a bit more room to run. A PE ratio of 28 doesn't look good, looks frothy, unless you can obviously bring that E up, and they believe that with the markets that chips are going into these days, that can happen.
So the E for earnings can be driven higher. Largely, it seems to be autos. The car seems to be the really big player for chips going forward.
Yeah, everybody's excited about that one. It's the most immediate one. It's the one that people can connect with the easiest. And if you think about it, though, there's 80 million cars a year get sold compared to more than 1 billion smartphones. So does it really make sense?
Yeah.
But then when you actually look behind the numbers, about $350 of content of chips in a car compared to about 50 in a phone. So potentially this has, the potential to have a big impact.
More value there.
Yeah.
Are the fundamental drivers we're talking about fridges and of course the Internet of Things. We're just talking about how AT&T is ploughing money into 5G. Is this also where it's hot?
I mean, the phrase that everybody uses, which I kind of hate, is Internet of Things, right? What does that actually mean?
Yeah.
And our research and when you speak to people, it's really industrial automation is where the volume probably is at this point. Even Ethernet connections for factories are still something that they're just about to get. So in terms of connections, in terms of remote management, in terms of bringing the data off those machines to manage them better, to be more efficient, that's right at the beginning stages. So the potential is supposedly huge. Seems
like this is another long-term bet, as we're seeing with Tesla today. What about the runaway successes when you dig into the chip makers? NVIDIA comes to mind. You talked about that chip maker a lot at the beginning of the year. Is it still the standout?
I mean, sentiment has definitely turned against it. There's been some downgrades which have obviously brought it back close to being in line with where everybody else was. And again, NVIDIA was AI, self-driving cars. We're going to be the brains of that. We're going to be the heart of it.
Every hot word.
Yeah. and to be fair to them, they actually posted some numbers. The numbers aren't particularly huge. They're better than anybody else's numbers, but they've shown material progress. It's just, ultimately that's going to attract competition of companies like Intel, which are much bigger, have more resources. So that's where some of the sobering sentiment has come from recently for those guys.
You're sat here in Silicon Valley, globally speaking. Is there a divergence as to who the key players are to watch in semiconductor makers?
Yeah, I mean, potentially this year, if you listen to the analysts and the investors, the memory guys are due for a good one. And you think, memory, that's old school, why does anybody care about that? It's just computers. But the thing is, a lot of this data, which everything is generating now, has to be stored somewhere. Traditionally, that's stored on magnetic spinning disks. That's all shifting towards SSDs, towards flash memory. No, there's only, 3 or 4 companies who actually make that. They're not overproducing like they used to. Stable demand to increasing demand versus limited to okay supply. Prices go up and everybody does better. Fascinating. We'll see if there's room to run. More than 50%. Ian King will be dragging you back on when it exceeds even that. Thank you very much indeed, Bloomberg technology reporter Ian King. Now, coming up, China's farmers are looking to the sky. How the Chinese government is planning to replace manual labor with automated farming. That's next. This is Bloomberg. The future of farming is heading to the sky. In southern China's Hainan Island, agricultural drones are being used to spray pesticides over crops. Now, the Chinese government is encouraging farmers to move from manual labor to automated farming. We have the story from China.
Zhang Yorong farms about 44 acres, and this year he's trying out some new technology. He's hired a team of drone operators to spray pesticides over his crops.
打药这一块，单单找人就不好找，可能有10多个朋友也是在用无人机打药，听他们说觉得效果还是可以，所以我就用来试。
The team of 6 arrived at dawn with their flying fleet and got to work.
第一个作为飞手的时候，他会先去把那地形勘察一遍，然后呢，他那配药手，他同时他会把那个农药这些东西都会配好。那这个时候的话，我们就可以进行加那个农药到里面去。那我们飞手他去勘察地形好之后，他就回来，就是说正常的去喷药。
Agricultural drones like these are taking off in China. In recent years, the government has encouraged farmers to move away from manual labor to automated farming. Right now, drones are only used on about 2% of Chinese farms, but the market could be worth $4 billion a year. And the world's top consumer drone maker, DJI, is betting more farmers will start automating. The company's introduced 2 drones for pesticide spraying that use microwave radar to scan the ground and maintain the right distance from crops.
Our drone helps mitigate the over-application of pesticides by essentially following a planned route. And the system is doing a lot of the work automatically. You can ensure more precise spraying.
But the drone is a small payload. The operators have to refill its canister every 5 minutes and change the battery every 10 minutes, which means it can only be used on smaller farms like this one that are about 50 acres. It's tedious, but cheaper and faster than hiring laborers. Zhang paid about $22 per acre to the spraying company. That's almost $7 cheaper per acre than hiring men with backpack sprayers.
我这个270亩的话，人工喷打的话，喷农药起码要4到5天，但是要无人机的话，要是顺利的话，一个早上就可以。
Fascinating. Now, coming up, we speak with former Apple CEO John Sculley. His thoughts on the future of artificial intelligence and its possible impact on fintech. That's next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio, why don't you? You can now listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the US on Sirius XM. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Mark Crumpton. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's begin with a check of your first word news. 2 adults, including a teacher, are dead following an apparent murder-suicide at an elementary school in San Bernardino, California. 2 students were wounded. Police say their conditions are not known. The shooting happened inside a classroom at North Park School. A school district spokeswoman told KMBC TV that officials believe the teacher knew the shooter. Judge Neil Gorsuch was sworn in today as the 113th Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. That's after a Senate battle exposed a bitter partisan divide that resulted in Republicans changing the rules so only a simple majority of yes votes was required for confirmation. In Sweden, people are questioning their country's open immigration policy in the wake of that truck rampage that left 4 people dead. The suspect is an asylum seeker from Uzbekistan whose request for a residence permit was turned down. A second person has been arrested. In France, the presidential election is now a 4-way race. Communist-backed candidate Jean-Luc Mélenchon has caught François Fillon for 3rd place. A poll out last night has Mélenchon at 18%. Independent Emmanuel Macron and National Front leader Marine Le Pen are tied for first with 24% each. The first round of voting is April 23rd. The runoff is May 7th. In London, thousands of people lined the streets to pay their respects to the officer killed in the terror attack outside the Houses of Parliament. Keith Palmer was guarding the Palace of Westminster when he was stabbed by the attacker, who was shot dead by police. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,600 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5 p.m. Monday here in New York, 7:30 Tuesday morning in Sydney. My colleague David Fickling has a look at the markets. David, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Yes, and here in Sydney, futures on the local index have opened just a little bit down. Those on the Nikkei 200 in Japan pointing down about 0.3% at the moment. And we'll be looking at Japan today because Toshiba is due to announce results today. These aren't the March quarter results, they're the December quarter results. Delayed twice so far. The company and its auditors have had trouble coming to a common picture on where it is. Of course, Toshiba's nuclear unit, Westinghouse, has filed for bankruptcy in the US, so that will form a big part of this. We'll also be looking at China Hongqiao, which has also been having trouble with its auditors in China today. Those are the main things that we're looking at today. I'm David Fickling, back to Bloomberg Technology.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde. Now back to our top story this hour, a battle of billionaires brewing in India. On one hand, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos has pledged $5 billion towards growing the e-commerce giant's presence in the market and taking on local leader Flipkart. On the other hand, SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son is said to be closing in on a deal to merge his smaller rival Snapdeal with Flipkart in an effort to fend off Amazon. Also joining the fray, it's eBay. eBay just gave Flipkart $500 million in its own business in India in exchange for equity and a cross-border deal. But one number worth noting, Flipkart's latest fund valuation, well, the company at $10 billion. That's down from the more than $15 billion valuation it was given in 2015, making this a so-called down round and serving as a warning that the Indian e-commerce market may not be the same kind of growth driver for these companies as China was. Now, artificial intelligence is quickly being adopted across every sector, including the fintech sector. One company that is utilising this technology in fintech is Lantern Credit. Based in Newport Beach, the startup provides an interactive credit report that allows customers to see how actions like applying for a credit card might impact their credit score. The company also partners with banks and uses computer learning to provide loan offers to customers. Joining us now from New York is Lantern Credit Vice Chairman John Sculley, of course, former CEO and Chairman of Apple, no less. John, it's great to have you here on Bloomberg Technology. Thank you for joining us. And first of all, tell us really what's different about Lantern Credit, because I'm looking at it and I know plenty of companies that offer perhaps free credit ratings and credit scores, and also those that offer you loans. How does Lantern Credit make it different?
Well, credit scores have been an essential part of financial wellness for many years. But until now, there hasn't been an easy way for people to be able to know more about what their real creditworthiness is, to find whether they can get much lower cost loans, to be able to improve their credit scores rapidly. And then on the side of the banks, being able to make much better informed decisions. And what makes Lantern Credit really unique, Carolyn, is that we've turbocharged it with the ability to use machine learning to do things that just haven't been possible before in consumer credit finance.
Like,
for example, the ability to have an intelligent credit score, which enables someone to, in real time, be able to determine what their credit score is and to be able to improve that credit score. This is the thing that's been missing in the market for consumer credit scores. Normally it takes many months to be able to know whether you can improve your credit score. We can use machine learning to actually go in and look at the behavior of consumers. These could be bank customers who are our partners, and being able to say, we can predict before they do anything, are they going to be turned down for a credit card? What could they do to improve their chances of being accepted for a credit card? How could they get a lower cost interest rate for a big ticket item? All of these things can be done with machine learning, and it's something which I think is really going to set us off on a whole new way about thinking of consumer credit.
it's interesting you say you're working with the banks. You've in fact just got a luminary from the banking industry, of course the previous chairman of Morgan Stanley, John Mack, to join as chairman of Lantern Credit. What about the working with the banks internationally? Is this a US-focused product at the moment? Are you looking globally?
Well, we will look globally eventually. Right now, we're focused on the U.S. We have a number of bank partners. We will be in the market later this year with our first release products. The thing that's really exciting about Lantern Credit is that we made an acquisition of a very advanced machine learning company, which is based on what's called nonlinear symbolic regression. And this means that we are a white box solution, Carolyn. White box is different from, let's say, the Google Deep Learning or Deep Minds, which is able to beat the Go champion. But no one knows how that's done because it's all black box. When you're in a regulated industry like consumer credit finance, the ability to have it human readable for audit purposes is incredibly important. So we have a white box solution. It's been proven in the market. And now we have adapted it for things like being able to determine the risk of a loan for a lender, in this case it may be a bank, based on the particular underwriting requirements of that specific consumer. what's really interesting about the bank partnerships is that they have massive amounts of consumer data, but they're only using about 1%, maybe 2% at best. So that data exhausts, that other 98, 99% of the data, we can start to harness that with our Beam AI machine learning technology. And that's what I think is going to help change the way people think about alternatives, options, what they can do, and help educate people, which is a big deal, by the way, for the Consumer Finance Protection Board, to see consumers better educated and to eliminate a lot of the confusion about credit finance.
You mentioned regulation there, the white box helping with that. Is the regulatory environment help or hindering the fintech space right now in the US?
Well, we are actually on very good terms with the CFPB, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, because they love the idea that we're educating consumers, that we're giving full transparency. No one's been able to give this level of transparency before, and yet be able to enable consumers to be empowered with wellness tools that really open up all kinds of new options for them, really expanding the credit possibilities by lowering cost of interest rates for many consumers, particularly on the larger ticket items. So I think the way we're positioning for the market is not only going to be good for lending and credit, but it's really, I think, going to set a new bar for the whole consumer credit industry. You've got credit bureaus, you've got credit report companies, but this is a chance to be able to say, how can we all work together and take it up to a whole new level?
Optimism aplenty when you're looking at fintech. John, I couldn't have you on and not ask you about, of course, where you worked previously, Apple. Is there optimism aplenty when you're looking at the innovation levels that are at your previous company?
Well, I think Apple is going to have a great year. In fact, they'll have probably a great 3 years, because the refresh cycle for the iPhone 10th anniversary, everyone's looking forward to it. It's coming a little bit later in the year than I think some of us thought it was going to. It looks like it's going to be announced in September and maybe not delivered till after that. But it's probably going to be a spectacular product. And Apple really is the iPhone company these days. They're moving more and more to services. And I think that you'll see a lot of growth around innovation of services for the iPhone.
But does it need more than an iPhone?
Well, the stock is up almost 50% over the last 5.5 months. So at the moment, I think the market's saying it's doing a pretty darn good job.
John Sculley, always great to get your opinion. Thank you so much. Of course, previous CEO of Apple, but now Vice Chairman of Lantern Credit, among with many other roles that you're currently fulfilling. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, speaking of tech and finance, Bank of America has named Gary Kirkham as its new head of technology banking. Kirkham replaces Chet Bozdog, who announced his retirement last month, according to a memo obtained by Bloomberg. Kirkham has been with Bank of America since 1996, most recently serving as co-head of software and enterprise banking. There, he helped close deals including Symantec's $4.7 billion acquisition of Blue Coat Systems and Carlyle Group's $7.4 billion takeover of Veritas. Now coming up, mobile game maker DeWolfe eyes an IPO. How Jam City plans to stay above the competition. We'll hear from the MySpace co-founder next. This is Bloomberg. Now, Google's AlphaGo artificial intelligence technology is moving on to its next challenge. The DeepMind AI software is set to take on top-ranked Chinese Go player in May in a formal rematch between the man and the machine. Now, you remember last year the program romped to a rather lopsided victory over South Korean master. The technology's success astounded experts who thought it would take as much as a decade before AI could beat top-ranked professional players of the game. And talking of gaming, mobile game maker Jam City is getting set to release new names this spring. Now, overall, it would seem including a Family Guy game based on characters from the Fox TV show will be available at the end of the month, and the company will have 5 additional titles launching this year. Joining us, I'm pleased to say, is DeWolfe, CEO and co-founder of Jam City, and of course he was co-founder of MySpace, which is where we all know your face so well from. But tell us about the new games. It's an interesting tactic that you use, sort of you're based in LA. It seems no surprise that you'd twin entertainment with technology.
Yeah, so we've been very successful over the last 4 or 5 years developing our own titles. And moving forward, starting about maybe 2 years ago, about half of the new games that we develop come from third-party IP. And living in Los Angeles makes it really interesting because there's so many great storytellers. And I think what we do particularly well as a company is we're able to sort of interpret that brand or intellectual property from a television show or from a movie into sort of the format of a mobile game.
I mean, keeping the authenticity of, the humour that's behind Family Guy and trying to replicate it in a gaming model must be pretty hard. Your numbers are pretty stellar, $425 to $450 million, I understand, is what you're aiming for this year. Are you monetizing the business at the right pace for your sort of optimism and enthusiasm?
Yeah, I think so. So we've grown at an average of about 100% a year over the last 5 years. So our growth, both top line and bottom line, have been phenomenal. We've been profitable for many years, so we're running our own race. We've had several seminal moments in our company's history. 2015, we raised $130 million from a Korean strategic. Last year, we bought a San Francisco company called TinyCo that really got us into the intellectual property market. They did the original Family Guy game. We just announced a Futurama game with them. They have a Marvel game. So about half of our employees are currently here in San Francisco.
So is M&A where it's at? Will that remain in your playbook going forward?
Yeah, well, we're definitely building organically and growing organically. We have amazing teams in place, but we have sort of a long history of doing a great job with M&A from the time that I sold my company to Fox, so I understand it kind of on both ends. And as we get into new different game genres, we'll do that mostly through M&A, because the games market, mobile gaming market, is consolidating in a huge way. There's only a handful of big companies left.
Consolidating, would you ever be prey, do you think, or will you always aim to remain independent? And I know you're gunning for an IPO.
Yeah, like I think an IPO is sort of the natural ending to a great startup, or the natural beginning, as it were. So we'll see what happens. We're going to keep our options open, but an IPO is interesting to me.
Soon as this year?
I don't think this year. I think it'll probably be sometime next year if we end up doing it.
And why play it slow and steady in the IPO ramp up? We're seeing the window wide open. We're seeing companies coming out thick and fast, particularly in the enterprise space. But Snap, of course, did terribly well at the beginning of trade.
Yeah, I've really never believed in timing things like IPOs. And as long as you're profitable, you don't have to worry about it.
Or don't even have to be profitable.
I guess, but from our standpoint, we don't have to go out and raise money. We don't have to do an IPO if we don't want to. We wait till we're ready. We will have had 4 years of increasing profitability behind us, like 6 or 7 years of top line growth behind us. So we'll be very ready. We want to make sure that there's no stumbles after we do IPO.
And looking at some of the gaming companies, mobile gaming companies that have gone public, I'm thinking of King.com, of course. I mean, I also look at Zynga. They're companies I know from Europe very well. And there's always the age-old question of, well, when are you going to have another hit? You keep on reusing Candy Crush Saga 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. How do you level off that kind of stress, really, that you have to keep on bringing these winning formulas to the fore?
Yeah, so I think you need to make sure that, for example, the hit games that we built 3 or 4 years ago are continuing to have all-time highs in revenues. So for example, Cookie Jam has done over $500 million in revenue, and we released that in 2014. Panda Pop has probably done $250 million in revenue. We released that about 3 years ago. So the whole key is to keep these games fresh and new. You have events, you add new levels. So the players in those games never want to leave because there's always something new and fresh. And every year you launch new games. This year we're launching 6 new games, which is going to be incredible. And those revenues and those profits stack up on top of the games that we've launched over the last 3 years. So you have a lot of diversity in your revenue streams, and you have a lot of durability, almost an evergreen nature to the revenue streams.
What about your diversity and durability in tech talent? Because you are based across you've got a couple of US sites, but you've also got one in Buenos Aires, I believe. Yeah. But how are you finding being able to find the right sort of talent in the US? Are any of the travel bans and indeed issues with visas been something that has concerned you as a leader of a business?
Visas are always tough, and we're always looking to aggregate the best talent. Our headquarters are in Los Angeles, but the majority of our employees are here in San Francisco. So between those two, we have about 375. San Diego, we have about 75. In Seattle, we have 25. So we try and spread out our talent up and down the coast to make it sort of easy to hop from town to town to town.
Makes your commute
to see what's going on, yeah. And so there's a great talent base here on the West Coast, as well as in Buenos Aires. So we're really happy with how things are going.
Well, it's been great having you stop by while you've been making some of your tour of the West Coast. Thank you for stopping in here, Chris DeWolfe. We hope to have you on again soon. CEO and co-founder, of course, of Jam City, the mobile gaming company. Now, coming up this Wednesday on Bloomberg Surveillance, it's a conversation with IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde, live from Brussels. Catch that conversation Wednesday at 6:30 a.m. in New York, 11:30 a.m. in London. Now, coming up, Comcast is looking to take on Netflix and Amazon. We'll bring you the company's plans for an online video service. That's next. This is Bloomberg. Now to a Bloomberg scoop for you. Comcast is taking on Netflix and CBS. The company plans to introduce an online video service offering hit shows from its NBC Universal TV networks in the next 12 to 18 months. Comcast is still determining many details, including, well, whether it will have a live feed of the broadcast network and if it will include sports. But there are plenty more details for us to digest with Los Angeles-based Bloomberg Lucas Shaw, who broke the great story for us. Lucas, you and Alex got together and really broke this element of news, and is it really Netflix, Amazon that they're gunning for? Why are they a bit slow to the party?
Yeah, well, if you're a traditional media company, if you're a Comcast, you're a CBS, you're a Time Warner, you're a Fox, a Disney, all on down the line, you have watched as Netflix and Amazon have attracted huge audiences with their on-demand services, and at the same time you're seeing the viewership for live traditional TV go down. So you're saying, okay, what can I do about this? We're still making billions of dollars from our TV networks, but we clearly need to do something for the future, kind of come up with some new service. CBS has tried with a couple of services. Time Warner has one with HBO Now and some smaller bets. Comcast has done a couple of small ones. They have a web service called CISO, for comedy fans, but this would be a much bigger endeavor, pulling together some of the strong programming from across the Comcast universe, whether it's on NBC's broadcast network, which has football and This Is Us and reality programming, or some of their cable networks, and maybe some sports as well.
And the advertisers could love this, can they? Because they do have a certain demographic which perhaps is slightly younger than the rest of them.
Yeah, well, CBS, which has a product in the marketplace right now called All Access, which is like the CBS broadcast network, but it's online, you get a live feed, and it's on demand. They've made a point of saying that the average viewer for that is significantly lower than that for CBS. And if you look at the trends, in TV viewership, it's only getting older for live TV. Yeah. Most young people are not watching as much live TV, and so if you want to reach them and you don't want to just sacrifice that demographic to Facebook, to Snapchat, and so on, and Netflix, you have to come up with something of your own.
Something of their own, talking of a man who's come up with something of his own, and it breaks my heart, Lucas, because I'm a massive fan of none other than Jay-Z, and he's decided to pull his music from Spotify, and I'm going to have to go out and get Tidal. Is that why?
It's the only reason that I can come up with. He's pulled pretty much his whole catalog from Spotify, with the exception of 2 records that he made with R. Kelly a long time ago. About half of his catalog or so is off of Apple Music. So if you want to listen to some of the classic Jay-Z albums, you can't get it anywhere but Tidal, or if you want to, listen song by song on YouTube or Pandora. Jay-Z, the timing of this is what confuses me, because Universal Music Group, which has a deal with Jay-Z, just made a big deal with Spotify last week. And then over the weekend, his music disappears. He's clearly trying to send some kind of message. Maybe he's trying to give some boost to Tidal. It would be helpful if someone from his camp would give me a call back.
Hopefully we'll chase him for you, because of course Tidal is his own rival streaming music company that he bought. It was a European-based company. Do we know how well Tidal has been doing? Because it wasn't a huge success as the businessman might always like to have seen.
Yeah, the big attention getter for them has been exclusive windows, or getting an early chance to release new music from several of Jay-Z's friends, proteges, partners, so on, like Rihanna, Kanye West. But most analysts think that it's got 3-4 million subscribers, which would make it the 3rd or 4th biggest paid streaming service in the market, but way behind both Spotify and Apple Music. Jay-Z did manage to sell, or the owners did manage to sell a stake in Tidal earlier this year.
I'm going to have to go back to my CD collection of Jay-Z then, it seems. Bloomberg's Lucas Shaw taking me old school. Thank you very much indeed. A great set of scoops for us. Now that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. On Tuesday's programme, Roger McNamee, co-founder of Elevation Partners, joins us. Do not miss it. This is Bloomberg.